What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up. We've been exploring the concept of differentiation, which is a concept that Dr. Murray Bowen brought into psychiatry. And the reason we're exploring it is because there are so many parallels to differentiation and achieving differentiation in our lives and emotional sobriety. In fact, I think we could say in many ways that as you achieve emotional sobriety in your life, you become more and more differentiated. And if we think of differentiation as the transcendence of environmental support to self-support, you'll get some idea of what that is. It's that movement away from looking for our environment to make us okay, to learning how to stand on our own 2 feet and to take responsibility for ourselves. I've started this discussion the last several weeks by exploring the nature of our consciousness at different levels of differentiation. And we started by exploring, what does our consciousness look like when we are in a very undifferentiated or immature emotional state? And that video is on that YouTube channel, which I'm sure Thom will be giving a link to if you have not. If you don't have that link, please put that down. That will be a great resource for you in the future to come back and review some of these things. So our consciousness changes depending on where we're at in our level of differentiation or our level of maturity. And what I looked at was, what did it look like undifferentiated? Then I talked about the middle stages, what looks like as we're making the transition from a low level of differentiation to a higher level of differentiation. And tonight we're going to be beginning the exploration of what our consciousness looks like when we start to achieve a higher differentiation, or what I like to call towards a well-developed differentiation. So this is a later stage, right, of our development. The dominant theme that takes place when we're at this stage, because remember before I talked about how, when we were undifferentiated, we didn't want to see certain things about ourselves. Then we became suspicious and we started to see ourselves more clearly. Well, now we are living with a sense of our autonomy. If you've been to our Herb's workshops and mine, Herb had this great slide where there's this guy standing in prison and he's got his hands on the bar and it looks like he wants to get out, right? And when you look up close, he looks like the guy's been imprisoned. And then the next slide is the zoom goes back, right? You pan back from him and he's standing in the desert holding these bars up, that he's created the prison that he's been in. Well, in the later stages of our maturity, we let go of these bars. We're not holding them anymore. We've dropped them. We've done a lot of work on ourselves to be able to begin to be free from all of these self-imposed constraints that we have created in our life. So there's a sense, and I love the way that Dr. Fritz Perls said it, is that we come to a place in our maturity where we take complete responsibility for the existence that we've created. We take responsibility for how we create our problems, how we create our symptoms, how we create our lives, how we create our relationships. Well, that consciousness creates a deep sense of autonomy. I kind of edited Michael Singer's idea of the untethered soul, and I called it the untethered self. That's what emotional sobriety is creating, is an untethered self. We cut all these strings. So now we live our life based on what we want, not what we're supposed to do, not what we're obligated to do. We do what we do because we want to do it. And we realize that when we get to this place, there's no better reason to do anything than that it's what we're interested in or not. You know, Thom, you've heard him say before, how can you trust a person's yes if he can't say no? You can't. If someone can't say no to you, then their yes is not real. So when we reach this level of differentiation, we've differentiated ourselves along two different axes. One is what we're going to talk about as self-differentiation, and the other is other differentiation, or being differentiated from other people. So let's first look at what it means to differentiate yourself. The first thing is that you have a very clear idea about who you are and what your values are. There's no more of a question about it. You know, this is what's important to me. This is what I stand for. So you live your life in respect to these values. The way that we can think about it is that your behavior is congruent with your beliefs, that what your feet do is what you want them to do. There's not your feet going in one direction and what you say going in another direction. You're not fragmented that way. You're operating from more or less a sense of wholeness or integrity. When you've achieved this level of self-differentiation, there's no more need to defend yourself. You don't have to prove you're a good person or not a bad person. It's irrelevant because you know you're both. I mean, you do things sometimes that are great, and sometimes you do things pretty shitty. Or Walt used to say, we're great people and we're also creeps. I mean, he says we got both parts of us, and we found a way to start living with those, right? And to be in relationship to all these different parts of ourselves. Since we're now no longer needing to prove we're good and we're not bad, we're undefended. If somebody confronts us about something, we're open to the fact that we could be wrong, but we're also open to the fact that we might not be. I mean, we don't have to fall on either side of the thing. We can investigate it. We can be curious if somebody says, God, I'm really upset with you about that. Well, let me see if I've got some culpability here. If I do, I want to take responsibility for it. If we investigate and we don't see it, say, God, I know you're upset with it, but I just don't see where I'm at in this with, and what you're saying. I'm just not able to relate to it right now. But not in a defended way. It's just that we're open. We have this openness about ourselves, which means that we operate from a grounding in humility, right? That we're right-sized. We're not overly focused on ourselves. Our self-importance is decreased. There's a low focus on ourselves, and we realize we're just a part of a much bigger thing here. We also realize that humility is being able to own our gaps in knowledge, to own our mistakes, to be able to say, I'm ignorant. I don't really know how to do this. And I'm kind of lost at this. And we can go to somebody and ask for help without being ashamed that we don't know. We just accept ourselves as we are. There's a greater sense of self-acceptance when we get to this place in our life. We have a well-balanced thought of who we are and our accomplishments. We don't overly exaggerate our accomplishments, but we also don't under-exaggerate them. When we're disturbed, we really, really get in the gap between the stimulus and our response. Because we know how to quiet our mind. We know how to calm our heart. This is where sometimes prayer and meditation are so powerful. As I said before, we live congruent with our values. We are committed to being authentic in our lives. We no longer have to have a persona, meaning that we no longer ascribe that we have to be something other than ourselves to be okay. Because we accept ourselves as we are, we're okay with other people accepting us or not. We don't have any more rules about that. We don't need to get everybody to like us. We now have a regular practice of inward or inner searching. So we're very much interested in our experience and what it means, and especially what we can learn if we're having trouble with a situation. We're always looking for emerging opportunities. We also realize that it's very important in terms of actualizing and being self-actualized is to be able to serve a cause greater than ourselves. And that we put a lot of energy into that. Like Brian says, thanks for giving me the opportunity to be of service. That's what this is about. So when we get to this place in our life, we really are concerned with what can I do to make a difference? We live with a high degree of an awareness about who we are and how we're functioning. We pay attention to what we're doing, how we're doing it, but we don't ask a lot of why questions. We're focused more on the what and how questions. We try not to live in our heads, but we live from our total experience. We live according to our true nature, not according to the introjects or the shoulds or supposed tos. When we do give something to someone, we give it with an open hand. We don't give it with strings. We now live as close as we can to unconditional love and unconditional giving. When we truly give a gift, it's a gift, and the person can do what they want with it. There's no strings attached. As I said, we live life with this inner searching. We are constantly asking ourselves, am I able to deliver the full message? If I'm communicating with someone I care about, am I truly representing all the different sides of me, not just one part of me? So we strive to find the words that are going to most accurately reflect our experience. Now, in terms of our differentiation from others, what happens at this stage of our development is we rarely take what other people do personally. We're able to now see what they're doing as a reflection of who they are, not a reflection of who we are. We've surrendered that. So our relationships truly become a relationship that Martin Buber described as I to thou. And remember before I said when we're undifferentiated, it's an I to it relationship. I see you as an object and I look at you as instrumental to meeting my needs. When I'm in an I to thou relationship, I'm not interested in you meeting my needs. I'm interested in just the kind of experience we can have together. We rarely let other people's reactions or opinions define us. We become the final sifter of our experience, the final arbiter of our experience. And if someone puts a label on us that doesn't fit, it just doesn't fit. We don't say, how dare you label me that way? They can do whatever they're going to do. It doesn't mean anything about me. It just says something about them. So our rules drop tremendously. Our unenforceable rules start to disappear. They vanish. We start to realize that we're not operating with these rules, especially those unenforceable rules that are trying to control others. If we have any rules in our life, they're rules that promote freedom. They're nourishing rules that can help people grow and help us grow. They don't put the bars around us, or they don't put the bars around other people that those toxic rules do. We no longer walk around with much of what we call a reflected sense of self. We don't look at how other people are feeling or behaving as a reflection of how they feel about us. Once again, it's more a reflection of who they are than who we are. We also, because when we're self-differentiated, we guard against compromising our own integrity. When we're looking at other differentiation, we don't accept the compromise of somebody else's integrity. So if a friend of mine gives something that they don't want to give, I discourage them from doing that. If my partner tries to give me something that they don't want to give me, I don't take it. I said, I'd rather you not compromise yourself to meet my needs. I don't want that. I don't want people to sacrifice themselves for our relationship. Not interested in that. And I'm also not interested in sacrificing myself unless that's what I want to do. So our relationships become shaped by who we are, who each of us are, not according to some ideal about how we're supposed to be. Just like we let go of this idea that anybody else has to work the kind of program I'm working in recovery to be okay, we don't put that trip on anybody else. We work our program, they work their program. We truly try to live by the Gestalt prayer, which is to say, I am I and you are you. I'm not in this world to live. Oh, I am I, you are you. I do my thing, you do your thing. I'm not in this world to live up to your expectations, and you're not in this world to live up to mine. If we come together and by chance, we meet and it makes sense, we enjoy those moments. And if not, we just accept that it can't be helped. So there's a whole different shift in our consciousness. So that's enough said on that tonight. I'll probably say a few more things about that next week, but I'd like to invite Herb and Roger and Thom into the room with me and have them comment on this, and then we'll open this up for a discussion.
Good evening.
Good evening. You got that baritone going, Herb.
Expecting Alfred Hitchcock.
I've got nothing. Here's where I am today. It's like I am an example of everything the opposite of what Alan just said. So just take a look at me and see. Don't come this way. All right, that's my input today. Don't go back. Okay.
I was listening, and I was listening, and I was listening. I was on the call prior to this one, and I've been listening and listening. And of course, I measure everything I listen to by my own personal knowledge and experience. And it came to me, Alan, as you're speaking. I began my process of differentiation when I was 4 years sober, 48 years old. Now, I didn't know any of that, but I'm looking back now, seeing how I could relate to that. And what I heard as you were talking is And I was particularly impressed with the prior session in terms of people's questions. And how can people really hear us when we present such wonderful words, differentiation? Sure. I mean, I have a graduate education in psychology and I've studied philosophy. And the man who saw me at age 48, 4 years sober, said, Herb, you just have an awful lot of information, but you have very little transformation. Now, I knew what he said and showed me in a restaurant publicly was true, but I just intuitively, I really didn't have any grasp on it. But now when you talk, I have a real grasp on it. So the people who are not differentiated cannot differentiate because they're just taking from the outside, trying to be decent, human, evolved, spiritually and emotionally developed people, and they're trying to take it all in and become that.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way, that's not my experience.
Yeah.
I had to go through multiple iterations of a process of getting some knowledge, but taking some action and then having an experience, a little bit of a shift in my consciousness. And you raised that one term. It was the centerpiece of my notes from the last session, consciousness. That's, I thought, I mean, 7 years as a monk in a monastery of silence. I mean, I'm really conscious in the sense of some awareness and information, but I am absolutely not conscious that I'm not conscious. That I'm not seeing, that right. I don't see.
That's right.
Until I began to wake up.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, the challenge that I give myself all the time. How can I be more effective in helping people begin to just wake up a little bit to sense and realize that they're not awake? Now, of course, suffering brings us all together. and that's the great stimuli for doing any type of action. But I mean, it would be wonderful for us at some point, and this is maybe an idea that just came to me, to have the four of us be a panel where 2 hours, 3 hours, we really explore that.
I think that'd be a great idea. We'll set up one of those workshops through Mary Joseph Retreat Center.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great thing to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can't emphasize enough what you've just said.
Yeah.
This can't be an idea. It has to be lived.
It's got to come from the inside.
Yeah, it's got to be lived. And listen, I know, look, you and I shared a lot of some of your journey together.
Yeah.
You know, and you shared some of my journey, and we still share our journey together. And I know the work you did. You know the work I do. Yeah. You know how I live my life, and I know how these two gentlemen live their life as well. It's seamless. Is what you see here. If you're in my life, this is my life. This is what it is. It's congruent. And I know that about you. I know that about Thom and Roger. See, Thom is so differentiated, he knows he's undifferentiated. That's how damn differentiated he is. Jesus Christ, Thom. All right, Raj.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Herb, for all of that.
Right.
You articulated it so well. How do I become more conscious? And it's not just through reading another self-help book. It's not just through gaining more information. It's through paying attention to the whole scope of my experience, my emotions, my body sensations, my spirituality, however I define that. We can all have ideas for each one of us about what that word means. When I ask that question in classes and workshops I do, I'm always amazed. For some people, it's connection to nature. For other people, it's connection to God. For other people, it's strongly religious. For others, there's no religious component to their notion of spirituality at all. But it is something that's associated with greater feelings of peace or calmness. So I appreciate what you said a lot, Thom, because I think one of one of the concerns I always have in my mind when we're talking about emotional sobriety is that we'll come across as, despite efforts not to. And for you, Alan, with regard to putting these intermediate stages in, which I've told you before, how much I appreciate that. Why? Because it challenges black and white thinking. It challenges either or thinking about emotional sobriety or any other subject. And when you said what you said tonight, Thom, to me, it's like, yeah, trust me, we can be, in general, we can be pretty far down the path of self-differentiation and differentiation from others. But if my stressors reach a certain level in my life on a given day or at a given moment, or an important relationship goes south to me, I can regress incredibly, right? To the experience of feeling, in terms of my actual experience, feeling not differentiated at all. And I like the fluidity of that, because I think it's hard to talk about this, because just as it's hard to talk about that kind of mysterious union of integrity and connection, right? Of concern for self and concern for others. It's hard to talk about emotional sobriety in a way where the real feeling of it and the real flavor of it, or differentiation, where the real feeling of it and flavor of it comes across, because it's an experience, right? It's an experience. So the attitude I try to adopt a lot is that it's those moments where I think I've got it, the best handle on differentiation, that I need to be most willing to question how good of a handle I have on differentiation, okay? Where I feel like I have the best handle on the balancing of self-connection and connection to others, is where I most need to question how good of a handle I have on integrating connection to self and connection to others. It's those moments where I think I have the greatest clarity of understanding for me to be open to the possibility that a month from now or a week from now or tomorrow, I'll look back and say, God, I didn't understand crap. I thought I did. But from today's perspective, that to me is the meaning of humility, is a willingness to always have it. And again, it's a paradox, because I'm not talking about that genuine self-confidence is not a good thing, or genuine self-esteem in the sense of self-respect and a sense of my capabilities is not a good thing. Those are good things, but it's always about balance to me. It's always about balance. It's never about just one piece of the puzzle. So all of you guys tonight, thank you for emphasizing the humility piece, and that no matter how far we've trudged down the path of differentiation, there are always going to be setbacks, and those are just part of the deal. Those are just part of the deal. So thank you.
Well, in fact, Roger, Bill Wilson, when he was defining emotional sobriety, he called it real maturity and balance in our life. So what you're talking about is such an incredibly important part of achieving emotional sobriety, is achieving this balance. So right on. I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps, that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved. The forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. The first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. We're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.